Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Product Talk with Malti. Well, we are back after a few weeks, but I'm coming back with a bang episode. So, today, in my guest, I have with me Nakul Jain. Nakul is the CEO and Managing Director at Wadhwani AI Global. He's somebody who comes with 15 years of experience, and he has spent a lot of his time at building tech products for social good, right? Whether it is education, whether it is agriculture, whether it is urban planning or healthcare, right? So, and when we are talking about, I was just thinking of this joke, lame joke, Nakul. यहाँ तो नाम में ही AI है, whether it is your company or in your name.
Wow, I don't think I've ever heard that before. Neither have I ever noticed that before. And I think that's a cool thing to now claim.
Thank you, and welcome to this episode. Super happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking
Thank you.
forward for this conversation.
Yeah. So after I kind of visited your Wadhwani AI Global the stall in India AI Summit. And it was so super cool to see the amazing work that you and the organization is doing, the kind of impact you are creating, right? So why don't we start with that, Nakul? And today's conversation is going to be, of course, all about product management in social good, right? So why don't we start from there, Nakul? That what are some of the products that you are kind of super, super proud of that you have been built in the last few years?
Of course, and just quick clarity. The stall that you visited was by the Wadhwani AI India team,
Okay.
right? And I represent the global team now. And I was a part of the India team for the longest time. I was there for almost 5 years. In fact, I headed product for India team before stepping into the global role. So a lot of work that you saw was developed when I was a part of that team. So
Amazing. So it's still part of your work.
very proud of the work that all of us did at Wadhwani AI India. Quite a few solutions. It's very difficult. I think it's like asking your parents which one of the kids is their favorite, right? When you worked so hard on so many different products and you worked with different types of users, you worked with different types of governments, it's taken you months, years to, come to something that has now started to show some impact on field. It's very difficult to pick, but, there are a few that we feel are the ones that have really the potential to become something really, really big. Like, for example, one of the solutions that we are working on in education is oral reading fluency, which essentially tackles the problem that fluency is a huge challenge in a country like India, right? Children in class 8 will have struggle in reading text from class 5. Children in class 5 will have struggle reading class 2 text, etc. Now, how do you solve that? And the first step is, of course, assessment. How do you assess students through a common standard to then move on to the next step of remediation?
Right.
And how do we automate that entire process of assessment is what we sort of built under this solution.
Mm-hmm.
So now, using a simple mobile phone application, a child is made to read a paragraph in the language they're being assessed for. And the application is then able to provide mispronounced words, missed words, correctly pronounced words, words per minute, etc. Right? So it'll give you a whole lot of details about the assessment of how well the child did, which can then provide a very clear pathway on what corrective measures need to be taken. Now, in a classroom setting, doing this for so many students and a teacher doing this manually, do this at least twice or thrice a year to establish a baseline, midline, endline, takes a lot of different resources. And you need a lot of different experts, but an ability to automate all of this. And once you have collected this data through assessment, imagine the amount of rich data that you have now to provide very precise diagnostics or precise remediation for an individual child at where they are struggling, and then how can they correct themselves or give them practice paragraphs or give them a pathway to sort of improve what they were struggling with. And this is something we deployed with the government of Gujarat. It was their vision to do something like this. They were already using a similar application which was probably not working out for them. They've been very supportive in collecting data, in helping us integrate the product into their ecosystem, in working with teachers and all the administrators to get this through. And we realized that we were in no time, we were able to do close to 3 million assessments for over 1 million students, right? In, I think, first few months itself.
Wow.
And now we stand at this solution deployed across Gujarat and Rajasthan. I think we have done upwards of 10 million assessments for close to 7 million students.
Wow.
So when you see this kind of scale, right,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of conversations about artificial intelligence, everyone's talking about products, and especially in development sectors, it's become a buzzword because, government, of course, is promoting it. We have seen a lot of pilots, or we've seen a lot of these products not go beyond some of these meeting rooms. At max, they will end up being piloted in a small setting and they will never scale. To see AI scale in a public setting that will actually create impact for the kind of citizens who would otherwise not have access to this technology, I think that's the most heartening part of this journey.
Correct.
So this solution remains very special to me and of course all of us.
Yeah. No, that's such a wonderful example. And I was just kind of, playing with my mind while you were talking. It could be so nuanced, right? First of all, there could be so much of asymmetry in terms of the child's expertise level, right? And then uh, multilingual, right? And there could be accents, there could be no dialects within Gujarat. I'm so sure, for example, there could be 10 different dialects, and to normalize that assessment across different grades. So what is kind of impact, or what is the kind of changes that you will help these students with?
I think the biggest impact is now we have a clear baseline. Then we have been able to do midlines and we know the clear delta, that how that
Okay.
improvement is happening. Currently, at least as a part of this project, the interventions are happening manually. So we have given a scorecard to the teacher. Now teacher knows how to focus on individual child and improve their ability to read a particular language.
Right.
And we have seen that improvement happening through those repeated assessments. But now we are also moving towards automating a lot of that, where even the remediation teachers could be helped by the AI
Okay.
for them to be able to sort of, give them practice paragraphs, help them read through more material and, continue with this journey towards fluency. And like you rightly said, it's difficult. I mean, there are so many dialects, accent changes after every few kilometers, right? There's a lot of social stigma as well when you are, speaking to a machine and being assessed by a machine. You are doing that assessment with your peers. There's a competition because now very empirical results are being sort of demonstrated.
Correct.
When we were doing data collection, a lot of children were shy. So it's not just about building the technology. And this has been our learning, building technology has been one of the easier parts of our journey. But how do you make sure that that technology hits the ground, how it is deployed, the manner which it is adopted and used makes a whole lot of difference. You don't want to create a system which the teachers or the students will reject, or which shatters their confidence, or which gives them a scare that this might end up replacing some of the work that they do, right? So how do you sort of position it in a way but also make sure that it creates the required impact
Right.
with the diversity that our country has is a journey, right? Which is way beyond just developing the technology. And I think for any organization who's looking to sort of work in development sector, I think this is the conversation we usually end up having, that you need to focus on everything around technology because it will require hand holding. Even vanilla software requires hand holding. Artificial intelligence is way too new because now you are giving power to make a decision that is not pre-coded by a human. It's being done on the fly, right? So it's
Right.
even more required to make sure that people who are using it are comforted so that they build that trust in that technology.
Right. Completely. And actually, that takes me to my next question, right? I mean, there is a lot of buzz around this fact that, like, is, AI taking our job and thing. But if you just kind of deeply think about this particular situation where a product manager is building this kind of a product, utmost empathy for the end user, which in this case is a student or a teacher who's doing the remediation or the assessment, the surroundings, the kind of network bandwidth that is available, the mental model of the student, the social stigma part, for example, that you called about, right? So my question here is that then a product manager who's working on, a public good or a social cause good product, what are some of the nuances which are not very obvious in the JD, but something that they embody in their day-to-day job?
Yeah. I would also want to address, the question around or the comment around AI taking jobs.
Mm.
I think we have seen through the history that this is a recurring theme, right? Industrialization was supposed to be taking jobs for manual workers. Your invention of cars And automotive supposed to take jobs for a lot of hand pulled rickshaws in the country. Your computers were looked at taking a lot of jobs. So there'll always be that fear that something new will take up jobs. And I think it gives us an opportunity to upskill or cross skill. We see a lot of people who were doing work differently are now leveraging these machines to improve their productivity, to do things which they never thought they would be doing manually using some of these technology machines. And I think that's exactly what AI will also enable.
Correct.
It will make you more productive. It will supplement your bandwidth. It will allow you to do things which are much bigger, much greater, better worthy of your time, right? And yes, as a part of that journey, you will need to upskill. No, there will be some discomfort through that journey for some of us, but that's how the world progresses, right? And we'll have to embrace it whether we like it or not. The sooner we embrace it, the better we are equipped and the more we are qualified to take up the new types of jobs and new types of opportunities that come our way.
Correct.
In terms of nuances, I think the biggest, if I have to just say one thing that is missing in these JDs, which is very different for how it works in development sector versus, like most commercial product managers, is patience.
Mm.
The development sector works very differently, right? It's very easy to get frustrated because the systems move slow.
Mm.
And there's a reason, right? I mean, you can blame government and bureaucracy all you want,
Mm.
but having worked with the government for almost a decade now, it's not that simple. It's very easy to say that system should change and things should happen in a better way. But when you live in a country as diverse as ours, when you live in a democracy with a population as much as ours, when you live in an ecosystem where vested interest varies so much,
Right.
it's very difficult to have systems that can work fast.
I can understand.
Right? So when you as a product manager are working with the government or their stakeholders or their vendors and you're trying to solve a problem,
Mm.
it's very easy to get frustrated because you think, hey, I'm just trying to help a particular field worker.
Mm.
The government doesn't want to help them. They do, but what they know and the purview that they have is very different from the purview that you carry because you are expected to solve one problem.
Okay.
Right? They have access to or they have on their head thousands of problems, lot of them interlinked, lot of them consume bandwidth, lot of them competing, lot of them conflicting. You can't imagine, things to move at a pace at which, probably a private sector would. So empathy to understand that and patience to work with that are two things that really makes you a good product manager in at least the development sector or the public sector.
Got it. So how does that translate into your day-to-day decision making or, from a prioritization framework? Because typical right now, they call it as the snake oil or the slop that they call. But, everybody kind of puts out a framework, a rice framework, or this framework. Do you really think in such a kind of complex setup, dynamic setup, what is the kind of decision making mental model or prioritization aspects? How does it work?
Yeah, I mean, I will not say that the frameworks that exist are not applicable in this ecosystem. They are.
Mm.
Works essentially help you to sort of uncomplicate difficult structures,
Mm.
environments, right?
Mm.
So you definitely can use those frameworks. In fact, we use a lot of those frameworks when we make decisions during our product management journey.
Mm.
But you tend to modify some of them based on the context that you are aware of in this social development sector.
Okay.
One additional thing that works in or which is required of a product manager in this ecosystem is the ability to do advocacy,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of decisions in private sector are purely driven by data,
Correct.
right? In development sector, I wouldn't say they're not driven by data. Of course, data is the backbone of a lot of these decisions, but there has to be a layer of sentiment and emotions
Mm-hmm.
and understanding of that ecosystem
Okay.
so that you can advocate for what you want to, position or push.
Mm.
So that is a skill that becomes very handy if you're able to work with your stakeholder who might not be working at the same wavelength as you because they might be experts in their own field.
Mm.
So how do you have that conversation? How do you advocate them by just not showing them certain data points, but also helping them think through and realize why what you are suggesting will make the required difference is something that becomes super critical.
Yeah. So when you attach like a purpose, and you spoke about some of the other things like patience and all that, right? A product manager, especially those who are working in the development sector, how much time do they really spend on the field with the actual end customers?
If it were to be on me, I would say they should spend all their time on the field. There's absolutely no benefit of sitting in offices and trying to sort of build something for users who are not with you, right? Because a lot of this, and very not similar to commercial sector, you don't have clear access to your users, and your users in most cases are not able to communicate what they need or what they're facing challenges with very clearly.
Correct.
Right, so their articulation is not as good as what it would be in a commercial sector, particularly actually if you're doing a B2B product, right? But in development sector, the user that you end up working with, one, they will be able to share their challenges, but they cannot articulate what can technology do for them. Two, they might not be even able to give you a complete picture, where you will need to sort of figure out what are the felt needs. Not everything will be explicit, right? So just sitting with them in one interview does not cut it. You have to live their experience to understand what they struggle with and how you can solve that ecosystem. And specifically for them, their lives are connected with so many government touch points or, governance touch points, which impact a lot of ways they work in some of their day-to-day, chores.
Right.
So now how do you make sure that all of that is taken in account if you haven't spent enough time, right? Then a lot of these things also keep on changing. So I'll give you an example. Okay? An ASHA worker who's an healthcare worker, works at village level, works directly with patients and their families. They are working on multiple programs at a given point of time. While it's very easy for us to think that, hey, they're working on health, one domain, one ministry. But that is not how it works within that ecosystem, right? Within a ministry, there's a TB program, there's a non-communicable disease program, there might be an HIV program, there might be a maternal and child health program, there might be a leprosy program, etc. Each of these departments will work with the same ASHA worker to deliver services. They will give them their own applications, their own tools, their own ways of reporting. All these systems are changing. So at any given point of time, the way things work on field would have changed the last time you were there. So it's also not like a big bang process where you go in, collect requirements, come back, design something, take back to them. By the time you take it back to them, things would have probably changed.
Shifted.
So you need to build it along with them. That means you need more and more interactions with them. And that's only possible when you spend more time on field than in your offices.
Yeah. But how does resources work? I mean, because as you said, there is a lot of layers, there is a lot of complexity and you're right. I mean, because you are building things at scale, super high scale, especially for a country like ours, which is very, very high on population and diversity, it kind of gets more complex, right? So are there like enough resources? How does that work?
Can you qualify resources for more?
I mean, for example, typically when you go to a commercial product organization, you will have a design team, you will have a user research team, you will have, designed programs, which kind of, do, like I have done a lot of these design for delight and stuff like that. How does that kind of, are there teams, are there people, are there budgets allocated for such initiatives?
So, fortunately, and that's exactly what Wadhwani AI has been bringing to the table. We realize that access to quality technology is only possible when we have access to quality inputs, right? Quality resources.
Right.
Which means that, yes, we will need all of it, what you mentioned. You cannot expect one person to take care of your project, program, product, design.
Correct.
You will need a specialist user experience researcher. You will need a specialist user interface designer. You will need a specialist product manager. You will need a subject matter expert. So if you're talking healthcare, you might need a qualified doctor or at least a public health specialist, right? Even within your technology world, you will need, either full stack developers, or you'll need people who understand, back end, front end. Within machine learning as well, you will need people who excel in a particular type of AI subdomain. Like, are you an image expert? Are you an expert with natural language processing? Are you an expert with sound and sound based signals, right? So we'll need access to all of those. You will need access to best of the compute, because while you are building for a low resource setting, at least some of the training might need some of the best compute that is available out there.
Correct.
Then you will also need access to the kind of infra that is available on field to be able to test what you're building. So if there's a certain, one small example, if there are 20 to 30 types of different handsets that people usually use, you might want to test it on them. Now, thankfully, there are emulators now that can help you without having to physically buy all those devices, but sometimes you do end up needing some of those devices to be able to test. And this has been our, non-negotiable from day one, that we will not sacrifice on quality because it's development sector, because, how social sector has traditionally been perceived. It does not warrant us to sort of continue with that notion and not use the best resources. So if you look at the people that we work with and the people that we have in the organization, they are best of the people in their domains. We hire from the best of the colleges, best of the organizations. A lot of people who eventually move on from our organization, they will join the big tech, because big tech would love to take them with the kind of work that we do. So we don't sacrifice, we don't settle on that. Thankfully, the philanthropic ecosystem have started to understand that. And they understand how expensive it can be to create technology. They also understand that, once it's built, scaling incrementally or transferring that technology for slightly different context or geographies is much cheaper once you have spent that money, upfront. And we've been supported. We've had all our, donors and funders who've been very supportive of the kind of cost it takes to build something. Mm-hmm. So yes, that capital is available. Having said that, it's not like a bottomless pit. So you obviously end up prioritizing. And I think the way we and this entire ecosystem has started to think is, rather than building 100 mediocre applications that might not be able to create the kind of impact we would want it to create, can we prioritize 20, 25, 30 applications that can genuinely create an impact which is measurable, and then figure out for the rest of the problem statements?
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Now, moving a little bit further on that, right? I mean, see, I have always worked in private sector, and for us, talking about the OKRs or the KPIs is that, what is the DAO, what is the revenue, incremental revenue you have made a difference, and, those kind of things. When you kind of come into a social sector setup, what does the OKR structure look like?
I think for us, the currency of success is impact. Mm-hmm. And that impact could be measured in different ways based on what problem we are solving, right? For a lot of work that we do in healthcare, the impact is in terms of number of lives impacted. For the TB work that we do, we know that if we are able to screen a patient well in advance, or if we are able to predict a likelihood of a patient ending up with either mortality or loss to follow up, it might result into the adverse outcomes that we would want to avoid. So how many of those we would ideally want to avoid, or we could potentially avoid,
right,
is a measure of success, right? You're talking about some solutions where you end up saving time. Have I been able to automate a process that has now reduced time for a field worker or a lab assistant to do the same thing from 20 hours to 4 hours? So I've reduced that 16 hours. What you want to present and how do you want to sort of consume that data or impact totally depends on, who you're pitching to. But are you happy with the fact that, now you can add on to 16 hours of additional work, or you want to convert that into dollar value is up to you, right? But the fact of the matter is something that has been reduced by that sort of amount. What does happen in our world is a lot of these measurements cannot always be very direct. Mm-hmm. Some of it you can very empirically, very clearly see, measure, record, right? And create an impact story around it. But not everything is very visible. When we do things like where we are predicting for a adverse outcome, and then as expected, interventions happen basis our prediction, right, then we change what would have originally happened, right? Which means you cannot measure your success against the final output, right? Because your prediction ended up changing the final output.
Right.
So then you do RCTs, you do some, smaller pilots, you do smaller trials. Some of these times you'll have to do some derived results, right? Some pseudo indicators. So in some of these cases, you have to live with that.
Correct.
Anything that we do is measured by the success that particular product has been able to achieve. And then that success is measured by what we were trying to solve for.
Got it. Yeah. And especially because you spoke about also in a lot of times it is kind of, you are not only probably talking about your product, but it is part of a larger ecosystem.
Of course.
You're let's say working with the IoT product or you're working with a device. So it could kind of not be so direct.
Yeah, and because when you're working with such large-scale government programs, you cannot expect only one intervention to happen at a point of time, right? While you are bringing one intervention as your AI solution, government is doing 20 other things. And let's say if a particular indicator were to decrease, it's very difficult to attribute what percentage was your intervention's contribution vis-a-vis what the other 20 things have done. And you might not have the budget, but also at the same time, you not have the resources to do RCTs with all these permutation and combinations. And it also becomes a little unfair when you're doing RCTs on actual people, right? These are actual people who you'll be doing RCTs on, which means that you'll be having them devoid of a particular cohort of interventions to measure how much was your attribution to it.
Yeah. Attributing that could be very tricky.
Yeah.
And actually that takes me to the next question. See, we always say that one of the fair practices or good practices for great product managers is that experiment, learn fast, fail fast, right? Now, when you are building something in a social sector, right? Especially in the AI world, experimentation is even more distinct because there are just so many unknowns. The technology, as you said, is new. Now, what is the kind of wiggle room that you have for an experimentation in this kind of a setup?
Yeah. Firstly, I'll respond to learn fast, fail fast. And I was speaking at a panel where we had a very similar discussion, and I was like, this entire agile methodology has created this learn fast, fail quick, which has resulted in so many pilots
Right.
that will never see the light of the day.
Correct.
And I think at some point we need to start striking that balance from the other end as well.
Correct.
Right? So let's not just start attempting anything because it's okay to fail fast.
Yeah. Especially right now, I think I just see everybody has created something or the other, right? So I think it's just multiplied in the AI era is what I feel.
Yeah, and also because with artificial intelligence, it's a little even dangerous, right? When you say learn quick and fail fast, you might expose real people to your solution that is making a decision.
Correct.
And you cannot not take that responsibility tomorrow saying that, hey, we were just learning. Yes, it made a wrong decision and, something adverse happened.
I agree.
And we failed. So that cannot be your excuse to learn quick and, fail fast.
Correct.
But there is definitely a wiggle room. Even in development sector, I think the entire ecosystem now thankfully understands that you cannot go live at a full scale on day one. Everyone understands you will do pilots, you will fail. There might be things that will not work. You might need to go back to the drawing board again. There might be things that will keep on changing. So that is a given.
Okay.
You cannot avoid that. But at the same time, the other expectation also is that how do you ensure that you are not just rolling out anything just for the heck of it? At the time of your design itself, you are making sure that what you are building is deployable. And that's why I said working very closely with users day in, day out is super critical to avoid your probability of failure.
Yeah, no, that makes, and it makes it even more trickier, right? When you are kind of working with such sensitive cases, you're building things for scale. Do you see any difference, especially from, very sensitive topics like data security, user concern, privacy? How do you deal with that, especially when you're operating at such a huge scale?
100%. And you need to have a very strong set of internal policies and processes to do that. To give you a very quick example, I headed the product for the organization for good, 4 to 5 years. In majority of the cases, I did not have access to any data myself. Because my role, I don't need to have access to actual data.
Okay.
Right? And that's a very clear process within the organization. How will that data come in? Who will be the custodian of that data? Where can it be stored? Who can have access to that data? How will it be anonymized? How will it be deleted post usage? Right? What kind of audit logs will be prepared? So these are super critical because you're dealing with, like you said, sensitive data. It could be a patient data. It could be data about children when you're working with education. Right? It could be a lot of financial data. And this is a data that, government has trusted us with. So our systems need to be rock solid. They need to be very airtight to avoid any sort of mishaps. At the same time, you need to have a disaster management plan as well.
Right.
If something were to happen, because things do happen to the best of the systems as place, you should not be caught off guard. You should know what are the plan, what are the steps that you need to take, right? So as a part of our work with government, we've been very particular about how data is shared, where data is kept, how data is processed, how data is purged. There are very clear policies, clear processes. We articulate that to the government upfront. A lot of governments have, preferences on where the data could be stored. Some of them, they don't want the data to be stored on servers which are not physically in India. So then we have to find the right kind of partners who have physical servers in India. Some of them are not comfortable with data going on cloud at all. So in that case, we end up working with the physical infrastructure that's present at government facilities, right? And it's a much difficult process to do that because you might not get the right type of compute that you might need. Getting the right kind of compute using cloud is very simple. It's very cafeteria approach. But when you are working with a dedicated physical infrastructure based out of a government office, and then government have their own processes, etc., it becomes very difficult. But you have to do that. That's a given when you're working with government. You need to work in the way they're most comfortable with. Now, when we work internationally, now given the current roles that I'm playing, Africa, a lot of African countries, they don't want to use servers that are, located at a particular place in India. They don't. They want to have physical servers in Africa. So now you have to figure that out with them. In a lot of these cases, they would want your help in defining the compute strategy for them, even before you talk about where the things will be deployed. We, in fact, when we work with these governments, there have been times when they tell us, hey, you've already built this solution in India, so you already have data. Can you just start working on that? And we say, no, we cannot. Let's say we build a solution with you, using data of your citizens. You wouldn't like us to take it to a country B, right?
Correct.
And it's exactly the same. What we bring to the table is the experience and the expertise of how to build or how to crack a particular problem. What we bring is our success stories, but also a lot of failure stories. So the do's and the don'ts, right? What we don't bring is data. What we don't bring is models, right?
Makes sense. Can you talk about one of the products that you kind of, built it for the Indian consumers, users, and kind of, ported it into your global locations, like in Africa you're building. So how did the process look like?
Yeah. So I will not say ported because, like I said, we don't port. We cannot take any model or data. But the problem statements are fairly similar. So now to give you an example, in tuberculosis, we've been working on a product known as loss to follow-up prediction, adverse outcome prediction, basically. So we will predict if the patient will either stop taking their medication or if there's or will they probably, unfortunately, die. And we do that at the time of treatment initiation itself. So we'll give them a risk category. So if you're a high risk, then the program can take very specific interventions for high risk patients. And for low risk patients, they can continue to doing what they're already doing. So they don't have to stop for low risk patients as well. And this was very exciting for a lot of countries when we went to them. They said, yeah, this looks fantastic because countries, specifically in LMICs, they don't have the resources to take care of all the patients with the exact level of rigor and level of intensity of interventions. So in those cases, they would want to prioritize, right? And we were working with Ministry of Health in Kenya. They have a system known as TIBU, which is a patient management platform for their TB patient, for their TB program. India has a system known as NICSHARE, which is the TB management, patient management platform for tuberculosis. And both the systems have a lot of common features. But more importantly, both of them have a lot of common types of data sets, common type of fields, which means now we can leverage data from the Kenyan TIBU, build a model that is relevant for them, right, and deploy it in their ecosystem, right? Because they like the use case. They understood that how it was built in India. anyways, one, we will never take data from India. Also, at the same time, the patterns that Indian data will have will not work for Kenya. So they might want to identify their own patterns, or AI might want to identify pattern from their data before it makes its decisions. Right.
But did you have any challenges where data was not there when you kind of took the solution?
Yeah. I mean, 80% times data is not there. You'll find way more encounters where there'll be no data than there'll be data.
Okay.
And when there'll be data, you'll find way more chances of data not being ready to be used for model building than finding data that's ready for model building.
Hmm.
And there's a reason, because a lot of these programs and the entire data collection setup mechanism has been set up for a very different purpose. It's not always set up to do data analysis. While, of course, that has been a byproduct, but a lot of this has been set up to do reporting and then analyze data to take certain programmatic actions by the government. It was not constructed keeping in mind that someday artificial intelligence would need it to sort of do some even more further predictions or advanced analytics.
Correct.
So you first need to, in a lot of these places, either we end up setting a data collection pipeline first, whether we do it primarily or we work with government and enable them to collect data through their partners. So that is one of the steps that we do have to take up a lot of times. And in places where data is available, but it's not of the quality that is required, then we need to first work and set up a process, set up, platform or whatever is required to make sure that at least prospectively the data gets collected in a way that can be leveraged directly by artificial intelligence. And we help governments do that. And that's a very common, very known something that we've been doing for all the different governments that we work with. It of course, is difficult in some countries than others, because some of the countries who are comparatively more technologically advanced have a lot of legacy systems. So there's a lot of patchwork, unfortunately, that you end up doing, because you might not want to just, get rid of that system which has been running for years and serving its purpose for what it was originally built for, right? But in some of the countries where there's no system in place, it's more expensive to, and it's more time consuming to build something new.
Yeah.
But then you do it the right way at the first go itself. So there's a trade-off always.
Yeah. That must be so fulfilling as well, isn't it?
It's amazing. I mean, I don't think I've seen the same problem twice in terms of the challenges that we face.
Correct.
Or maybe then it stopped being a challenge the next time you see it, so you then encounter a new one. But there's so many different nuances when you work in this. Like I was saying, technology has not been the most difficult part for us. It's been people and building their capacity. It's been process and procedures that are already in place. It's been availability of physical infrastructure that the government has in place or the ecosystem or country has in place. It's been the partners that the government is working with and their ability to take some of these programs forward. It's the way these programs are structured. It's the way government wants to even think of a proof of concept. If I'm giving them an AI solution, how do they even know, how do they even define success for that AI solution, right? So it's everything around, it's the platforms that exist, like you said, building a new platform versus, editing or customizing the current one. So it's everything around that core product that you create that requires a lot of time and effort. And it's genuinely very fulfilling to sort of work when you know that there's so much to be done. But yeah, because it takes a lot of intellect. It takes a lot of, mental intellect to be able to sort of bring all of this together.
Completely.
Time it in a way so that all of it comes through at last. There are so many dependencies, there are so many stakeholders you're working with, so that ecosystem becomes very complicated.
Correct.
So while it's also purpose, impact-wise fulfilling, but it's also very intellectually fulfilling when you end up sort of, solving such complex ecosystems.
Completely. Now, coming back to, and one last question, Nakul, coming back to this, the PMs in social good sector. You spoke about a lot of elements, especially the emotional part of it, the purpose part of it. But stepping back, when you are looking at the career growth aspect, from a product manager to a product leader to a CEO, you yourself have kind of, come up that ladder. Is it, you see any constructively any difference between a commercial product versus a social sector product in terms of their growth?
It shouldn't be. Even if there are notions that a lot of people have, because, we do hire a lot of people from commercial sector. and people come with certain notions, or people have these questions that you ask me as well. It shouldn't be, and that's how most organizations, including ours, are designing this process to be. Also, I also feel that the lines between social, or actually not for profit sector and for profit sector, the lines are now becoming dimmer and dimmer because they're thinning. Social entrepreneurship is coming up in a big way, right? So while you'll see your measure of success will change when you're working for a social development sector for your compared to your commercial sector, but the processes, the way you will do things, the kind of skill sets that you'll need, the growth that you will see, it will most likely be same. The added advantage is the scale at which you work and the complexity that you work with.
Correct.
Right? So you might not be only chasing dollar values. You might not only be chasing, bottom line, top line. There'll be, primary indicators that are probably different from this or as important as this, right? But what you will be doing as a product manager in your day to day will not considerably change.
Right. And that such plays like a music to my ear, because I think, as you said, it has to blur and people have to find it as fulfilling whether you are working in a private sector or a for profit or not for profit. And I think there I do believe technology is a huge level player, and intellectually I think the scale, it is extremely satisfying.
And specifically for technology, you rightly said technology is a level playing field, right? Social sector uses all the technology that commercial sector is using, right? Although big tech is working in social sector as well as the commercial sector, the products that we create use the same technology that a lot of commercial sector are using. There might be a gap in terms of maybe how advanced technologies are being used much better, much quicker in commercial world than in social development world. But I think that's also changing with time.
I agree. I think this has been a great, I would say, a lot of new learnings for me as well, because probably this is the first time I'm talking to so deeply to somebody who's been involved in the, not-for-profit sector. So I hope it kind of opens up conversations for a lot of people, especially those who are kind of thinking about, joining not-for-profit or social sector. And I think, as you rightly said, I think the government also has a very important role to play, because the incentivization or the support that they're giving for social entrepreneurship, I think that will go a long way. And I do believe in the coming years, a lot of things around clean tech, social good, I think there are just so many opportunities right there to build.
Yeah, I mean, the social development sector is changing very rapidly.
Very fast.
And there's so much that's happening.
Correct.
It's a very exciting space to be in right now.
Correct.
So I'm glad I could share my perspective with you today. I'm glad I could share my experience with you, because a lot of people are not aware about how things work in this part of the world. But I can assure you, it's as exciting as any other part of the world that anyone's working in.
And if somebody has a question, they know where to reach out to, whom to reach out to.
100%.
Thank you so much, Nakul. I really appreciate you taking the time out and sharing very deep nuances of your close to 15 years of experience, and a lot of it in the social sector. This has been super delightful and super learning for me as well.
No, thank you, Malti. Thank you for being kind to me while asking your questions.
No. Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you.